The debate organized by the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce. Before we begin, may I please ask the panelists to take their seats on the stage? While they are taking their seats, I will extend an especially warm welcome to our special invitees, Honorable Shehan Semasinghe, Honorable Dr. Harsha De Silva, Honorable Professor Ranjit Bandara, and Dr. Harshana Surya Perumal. And of course, our moderators, Chairman of the Ceylon Chamber, Mr. Duminda Hulangamur, and Board Member, Ms. Kasturi Chellaraja. Before we commence, may I draw your attention to the QR code behind me and ask you to take just a moment to scan the code, which will give you access to the Chamber's landmark policy document, Vision 2030, which was just recently launched. I do urge you to access it, as it will prove useful as a point of reference during the debate. Also, an announcement: due to the extremely high demand in today's debate, we are live streaming it on our Facebook page. And with that, I will now ask Mr. Hulangamur to take over the proceedings.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, I extend a warm welcome to all of you who are here to join the discussion on the theme, Defining the Vision. First time that a debate of this nature has been organized, and I thank all of you for your graceful presence. I also want to extend a warm welcome to our panelists, Honorable Shehan Semasinghe, Honorable Harsha De Silva, Honorable Ranjit Bandara, and Dr. Harshana Surya Perumal. We have very limited time, so I'll just give you a format in which we are going to conduct this session. We'll have an exact 8 minute given to each panelist. Yes. We want to give it 8, so you can finish at 10. 8 minutes for each panelist to make a presentation in brief of their policy. Thereafter, we'll have a moderated question and answer session, which will be done by Kasturi and myself, with 3 questions to each panelist, and you can confine to 3 minutes for your answer. We'll have 3 rounds of questioning. Thereafter, we will invite the panelists to question each other of their policies or ask for clarification. So it's a question and answer session between the panelists. That will take another 15-20 minutes, with 3 minutes for each person. So, and we are hoping to finish it by 10:30, 10:45. I'm aware you have to leave for your manifesto launch, but we'll try to finish it by 10:30. So with that, may I first invite Honorable Shehan Semasinghe, representing the Honorable Ranil Wickramasinghe, to make his presentation on the policy statement.
Good morning. Firstly, let me thank the Chamber of Commerce for organizing this event, and wish to make a brief statement on the vision that we are trying to take forward. Excellencies and distinguished panelists, firstly, let me give a brief explanation on how the country was looking back in 2022. The economy came to a complete standstill back in 2022, and I think it was mainly due to the lack of foreign currency, where we could not even purchase our basic requirements, needs required for daily lives. From there onwards, the government had an ambitious reform agenda. It was faced in 3 folds. One was to ensure that we address the foreign exchange crisis and eliminate shortages. Number 2 was to ensure that we address the root causes of the crisis and the macroeconomic vulnerabilities to stabilize the economy. The third phase was to ensure complete stabilization and economic growth. Okay, the phase 1 we began in 2022 April. The immediate measures resulted in resolving the queues on fuel. The queues began to decline. The availability of essential food items improved. Power cuts became shorter. More importantly, fertilizer was made available. Food production resumed. Cash transfers to vulnerable communities and households were increased. A major food crisis was averted, which everybody was predicting that there will be a severe food shortage as we rolled out. Remittances resumed. The tourism sector had an increase. Economic activities started to grow. By early 2023, the queues were completely eliminated and we restored the electricity supplies without any power cuts. In our view, the plan was successfully completed. And then the second phase was the most important to ensure stability and get the economy going. But while doing that, the government as a policy did not ignore the fact of the fundamental causes of macroeconomic vulnerabilities and instability. A comprehensive macroeconomic reform program was initiated to address these root causes. This was a primary requirement at that time. We adopted a comprehensive fiscal reform, a monetary policy reform, the state-owned enterprises reform, financial sector reform, debt restructuring, and then, more importantly, welfare programs. The primary budget deficit in 2021 was 5.7% of the GDP, which was converted with this reform program to a primary surplus of 0.6% of GDP in 2023. In the first 6 months of 2024, the primary surplus reached rupees 543 billion. Inflation declined to 2.4% from 70%. Food inflation, which was at 95%, reduced to 1.5%. The taxpayers, the numbers dropped down to 437,000, was increased to 1.15 million in 2023. Usable reserves were at $20 million in April 2022. By end of July 2024, gross official reserves was increased to 5.6 billion. Losses of the 52 important SOEs, which was at 775 billion in 2022, converted to a profit of 456 billion in 2023. Interest rates started declining from 30% to a single digit. The currency appreciated from approximately 363 to 300 rupees. The treasury cash balance was converted for an overdraft from overdraft of 832 billion in end 21 to a positive cash balance of rupees 552 billion by end of 2024 April. As a part of the reform program and the improvement in the economy, we also compared the pricing, which has declined significantly. I will not explain, it's there in the slide. The essential items, including fuel, the costs started coming down. I think people expect more reductions to be done, but it's in a more systematic manner that we control the economy. Therefore, the market-driven economic concept, we will ensure that the prices come down further down with the confidence boost in the economy. The more important factor in this entire reform program was making sure that we look after the poor and the vulnerable communities in Sri Lanka. We do admit the fact that poverty levels have increased to 25%. That was as a result of the crisis we faced. One was COVID, and then the economic crisis we had to face. We increased the cash transfers in a more scientific method. We are thankful to the World Bank who assisted us, where the poorest household in this country had a cash transfer of 15,000. from a level of 4,500 a month. Apart from that, the elderly citizens, citizens with disabilities, kidney patients who needed support from the government were also supported, and their cash transfers were increased by 50% than what they got before. So while we shaped our economy, we ensured that we give the basic requirements that can be funded by an individual. The other most important thing in phase 2 was to bring in...
Honorable Singh, your time is up. You have 1 minute more.
The more important factor is bringing in the legislations which were required. We emphasized, the last 2 years, we emphasized on the new laws and legislations which were passed in Parliament, mainly the Central Bank Act, Public Financial Management Act, Public Debt Management Act, Economic Transformation Law, Parliamentary Budget Office, and the amendment to the Banking Act and Banking Special Provisions Act. So these were key legislations that were introduced to ensure fiscal discipline in Sri Lanka, apart from the measures taken to combat bribery and corruption. In my next session, I will explain on how we have emphasized and introduced new legislations with the assistance of the IMF, the World Bank, the ADB, and the other partners to combat bribery and corruption. I think that will have a significant result in the future, and that is something which every citizen in Sri Lanka expects a government to do. So I think we are in the right path, and the economy is strengthening on a daily basis. We have gathered momentum on confidence of the economy. So it is up to the people of Sri Lanka to decide whether we take this growth forward or we decide otherwise. So let us see what happens on the 21st of September. But the assurance what we can give you is that the economy is in the right path. The critical point on the 21st that people has to decide would be on the economy, how we are going to grow, or are we going for a decline in the economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Singh. I now invite Dr. Harsha D'Silva to make his presentation, please.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for this invite. Friends, given the 10 minutes, I'll very quickly explain our game plan and why we need to be elected. Our objective is a win for all Sri Lankans, based on our conviction that a social market economy is what we will bring the desired outcomes. In short, our model is a synthesis of economic freedom, the belief in markets, and economic justice, the belief in equity, and everybody gets a piece of the pie. Having said this, let me quickly detail out our 10-point plan consisting of 5 pillars. The first pillar, these are my 10 points. The first pillar is transparency and accountability. This is necessary. This is a necessary condition to move forward, but it is not sufficient. We will set the right legal framework, strengthen the CBOC, and key among our plans is setting up an independent public prosecutor to take away the conflicts of interest between corruption litigation and the Office of the Attorney General. On public procurement, we'll bring in the public procurement law, e-procurement platforms, new laws for asset recovery, and also, importantly, better transparency in public finance management, including the bill just passed on the Parliamentary Budget Office. The second point is on stabilization. We got 4 segments in this. First is debt crisis management. We will continue the negotiations if agreements are not signed by the 21st. I hope the deal is closed. At the same time, engage with the IMF to amend certain terms, staying within, however, the DSA parameters. We don't intend to shift those parameters, but we plan to amend within those. Ensure financial system stability while dealing with the NPL issues that we all face. Loan revival units, parata issues with MSMEs, etc. The second point is monetary and exchange rates. maintains the strengthened independent central bank. We are not going to change that legislation. We supported it. We will ensure that they report to Parliament as required, but we will not interfere in setting interest rates. Keeping in mind, however, Governor, the need for international competitiveness by ensuring an appropriate real exchange rate. That's what we actually require to be competitive. Third is revenue consolidation. We agree on the need to increase revenue to 15.4% by 2027 to 2029. How do we get there? While improving equity of taxation. Key here is digitalization. The RAMIS, the ASICUDA, excise, all of those things we will be looking at very seriously. And we will, and this has been talked about for a long period of time, to create a unified revenue authority. Registration of taxpayers, we heard that there are 1,100 or 1.1 million, but there's a lot of double counting. So we need to ensure that people are registered, business professionals, expand the net, increase compliance. But there is one major proposal, that's a middle class tax cut. The tax-free threshold will remain. However, from there to close to ₹500,000 rupees, you will pay at the marginal rate, maximum marginal rate of 24%. And the rich will have to pay at 30 and 36%. We are not being irresponsible, we are being responsible. We understand the repercussions of striking out taxpayers. Several adjustments are proposed for corporate income tax for exporters. That is because of ideology that we need to remove the anti-tradable bias in our economy. But we will talk about that later. We are also thinking about the minimum alternative tax, talking about the OECD Pillar 2 on the base erosion and profit shifting taxes. And we will not, Mahinda is going to get displeased with me, remove as planned the SVAT as it now stands, because there are two SVATs, the suspended VAT and the simplified VAT. We believe that the suspended VAT makes sense, and we will discuss it on how to actually implement the earlier SVAT for exporters and those providing services to exporters. Fourth is expenditure control, rationalized public expenditure, data-driven planning, transparency and accountability, leakage of cash transfers via digital mechanisms. We'll prioritize infrastructure expenditure. We will complete the Kandy Highway, but beyond that, we will have to see how much we're going to put on highways. But the LRT, the train, we will look at carefully. Military spending has to be rethought. Any excesses will be moved to pay teachers. SOE reforms, Suresh will continue with the basic game plan of a holding company, and the Secretary of Treasury will decide on the divestiture based on national security issues and things of that nature. There is going to be some increase in expenditure. Public sector salaries will increase, but that is based on the Presidential Commission, the Cabinet Commission on salary disparities. We are not planning on moving away from that. We will keep to the 24% and we'll keep to the 25,000. And that we assume is possible because the Treasury has issued a statement that they can do it. Maternity leave benefits and menstrual equity will be two things that we will be focusing on beyond that. Third pillar is the most important, and that is incentivizing growth. More from an anemic 3% growth, we need to get to a higher growth path, right? Post-IMF program, if we grow at 10%, it will take us till 2047 to reach $23,500, which is a developed country. So let us get started moving in that direction. We don't want to give false promises, but we want to unshackle the markets, reduce and remove interventions, and increase productivity, which is critically important, total factor product. 4 areas: trade and investment policy reform. Here we talk about tariff rationalization, export strategy, national single window, and new EPC models. We agree with the new legislation on private enterprise zones. We are fully geared to modernizing agriculture, removing the asymmetry in agriculture markets. Farmers don't know what the buyers want. Then breaking the rice mafia is priority to bring down prices, access to land, the Shakti Rice Corporation, etc., cooperative. Third area is industrial development, connecting to global productive networks, production networks. Our failure has been, for decades, we have been inward-looking, we've been statist, para-tariffs since 94, worse since 2005, This country, this economy has really a structural problem of an anti-tradable bias. We need to remove
Dr.
that.
Harsha, you have 30 seconds.
Right. No, you give me, right, okay. 2 minutes more? No? Here the problem
1 minute more.
is breakdown of walls and building bridges. The fourth criteria, the last one, is on services. I don't need to explain on IT, on logistics, and all the while paying attention to the MSME sector. The fourth pillar is public sector management, digitalization. Our whole program is based on a digital public infrastructure. I'll stop at that. On that, energy and utilities reform, we agree with most of the new legislation, but we can't grandfather non-competitive bids. There is a major focus on renewable energy. Factor market reforms, we will continue what needs to be done. And the last pillar is a strong social safety net. This is key. Like Shehan said, 7 million people are in poverty. So therefore, Sajid wants to create a model that is more like Janasavya, where you don't just dole out money, you have to work for your money, and that's a 24-month program. Until that is structured, we will continue with the Aswasuma, but we plan to increase the first two lots from 5,000 and from 8,500 to 10,000. And during the discussion, I'll be more than happy to show you how we plan to increase the revenue to meet all this expenditure. So to summarize, we will continue the path of recovery. We acknowledge the positives. Yet, change to ensure the recovery does not come at the expense of our people's survival. We will incentivize tradable export growth in the long term to permanently lift Sri Lanka out of the cycle of crisis by generating high growth. We will undertake reforms to sustain the change we create, to unshackle markets, and to use digitalization to the max to increase efficiencies and productivity across the economy. And at the end, what we will do is to bring a win for all Sri Lankans. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Harsha De Silva. May I now invite Professor Ranjit Bandara from the SLPP.
Morning, everyone. Thanks for the invite. This is a 10-year plan with two components, which is outcome-oriented. In this, there will be immediate relief package. Two speakers have explained why we need a relief package. And sustainable integrated growth strategy with 4 pillars. And at the end, there will be an economy from 90 billion to 180 billion within a period of 10 years. We are looking at 7% annual average GDP growth. There will be increasing per capita income from USD 4,000 to 8,000 over a period of 10 years. What we propose is based on the essence of Mahinda Chintanaya. However, in this fundamentals of Mahinda Chintanaya is timely revised, modernized, structured, innovate to address the current issues and enhance the future prospects of the economy. There is a achievable outcomes oriented policy framework. There are no fairy tales included in it. Let me answer a possible question you may ask, why we have taken the essence of Mahinda Chintanaya, which was proven and outcome oriented, visible, sustainable and holistic. What will be presented briefly here will be presented on the 2nd of September. You will see the details of our policy framework. For the time being, let me briefly explain what we are proposing in our policy framework. As I said, it will be in 2 components. One is the package of immediate relief across the board. Number 2, there is an integrated sustainable economic growth plan with 4 pillars. Let me outline the package of immediate relief. The list can go up to 100, but of course, for the time consideration, food for all, relief for utility bills, affordable fertilizer, 100,000 jobs, financial empowerment of youth, strengthening the Samurdhi program, immediate tax relief, efficient public service, uninterrupted medicine supply, fast-track investment, and also, for the first time, state balance sheet, forensic audit where necessary, and research for commercialization. Now, let me take you to the first pillar of sustainable growth plan. That is prioritizing the state. Now, why we need to prioritize the state? We have to protect our national interest, economic sustainability. Therefore, in which we propose efficient public service, mostly to support the other three pillars in our growth plan. Let me take you to the second segment of this growth plan, that is innovation, where we have four main sections which are key to achieve state priorities, as I said, national interest, economic growth, social progression, environmental sustainability. Now, this particular pillar includes state sector, that is public sector optimization, e-governance, no sales of public enterprises, high quality public administration, etc., etc. Agriculture modernization, manufacturing sector, and the service sector. Now, the third pillar, investment. We believe investment in four areas are essential to drive innovation-led development: entrepreneurship, human resource enhancement, research and development for commercialization, investment in infrastructure. And the fourth pillar, which is freedom. We believe four main types of personal freedom are essential for scale up the development program that we propose. Number one, expanding the economic freedom, protecting political freedom, protecting cultural freedom, protecting religious freedom. This policy framework is meant to address immediate issues that many of us facing right now, and also to take the Sri Lanka to the next level. And as I said, we have included no fairy tales. This is doable. How we do it? We will expand the economy from 90 billion to 180 billion with a 7% annual average growth rate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Bandar. You stuck to time. May I now invite Dr. Harshana Suriperuma, representing the NPP.
Aiwan, Vanakkam, Assalamu alaikum, and good morning to you all. I suppose, Duminda, we would have had many sessions of this nature when there's an election nearby. We would have listened to this type of rosy stories or fairy tales, lot of graphs as to this is how we are going to implement. But look at the results. It's boiling down to implementation. It's about credibility of political leaders to deliver what they preach. If you look at the Auditor General's statement, my presentation will have two components, just to brief. One is why we are here today as a nation, and what's our plan as we go forward. Auditor General of the country is mentioning, since 2015 to 22, 8 trillion rupees government has borrowed as for project loans, of which 75% is unaccounted for. Our international counterparts, I'm sure they are listening. This is where the money is going. Duminda, representing auditors, it will be an insult to auditors when Auditor General has reported 75% of the funding is unaccounted for. We are here listening to a team who are answerable for that. That's one angle. Madam Kasturi, coming from the private sector, in your organization, if you have managers, key managers, who have never delivered the budget, overspent on their budget, on their expenses, overloaded factories with staff, never delivered what they promised, would you interview them again to ask what are they going to do within the next 5 years? What would your shareholders think if you do that one? What would your employees think who would look up to you if you do that? But here we are today, doing the same thing, listening to failed politicians and their stories as to how are we going to do it again within the next 5 years. That's why a change of culture is required in Sri Lanka as to how we approach this as a nation. Central Bank printed enormous amount of money. Which provision of the previous Central Bank Act prevented the Monetary Board to take an independent decision as if there were competent officials there, appointees there, to say no to a minister? When the government is asking, if the Secretary to the Treasury is asking to print money, that's why there are many members, not just one, in the Monetary Board to say no, not to be overwhelmed by intimidation of politicians. That is the change of culture we need to look at, not just by changing legislations. Few months back, the same Secretary to the Treasury said, if you are going to increase 10,000 rupees, we have to increase VAT. We don't have money. 2 months later, when the government is saying we are going to increase salaries again, the same state officials are saying, oh yes, the government revenue has now increased. We can ask IMF to increase our provisions for increasing salaries. We need a change of culture where state officials will be able to stand up on their own for what they truly believe, not to be lip servants to the politicians. That's the change of culture that we are talking of. Let's get quickly to the presentation. We'll move on to the next slide, please. It's about the future of this country. We have seen promises that were saying, I don't know how many of you all came today in a Volkswagen made in Sri Lanka. I'm not sure whether the ambassador from the German embassy is representing us. These were, which one should I press? This one? Okay, thank you. So, whether the German ambassador or the diplomats will vouch for these stories that was told, misled people to win elections. Google balloons, I can see it's hovering all over Sri Lanka, and we are enjoying free internet. Now, in one angle, some are saying we have to bring an end to the menace of subsidies, whereas the same politicians are going and leaders are going and distributing handouts. Party leaders are saying, senior officials saying that they are funded through illegitimate sources. Should we continue this political culture in Sri Lanka? We are saying we have ended queues. If you go and looked at the visa queue yesterday, this would have been your picture. Millions of Sri Lankans are trying to run away from this country. This is the country these failed policies and politicians have created. Don't we need to change that? So that's why. And the political culture, once again, the Central Cultural Fund, there's a report saying, there's allegations saying, so much of misappropriation. It has come to Parliament. Where are the outcomes? Is this the culture that we want to continue? We can see a few weeks back, a banking seminar was called, and banking senior officials were advised on governance side. I couldn't stop laughing when I see who was on the stage. And when the head of the state, under the privileges of Parliament, is abusing the judiciary, where can you expect the rule of law? This is the change that we expect for Sri Lanka. This is the change people of Sri Lanka is asking for. That's what NPP is all about. It's about the leadership. It's about the purpose-driven policies. It's about a team with an unblemished track record to deliver with experience and expertise. It's about clean politics, accountability, governance, and transparency in our implementation. It's about rule of law that we are going to deliver, allow businesses to ensure you will have a level playing field and fairness in terms of conduct, in terms of by taking away the impunity given to politicians, and the same law will be applied equally to them as well as to you, not to rob the business opportunities that you have. It's built on a bedrock of zero tolerance for corruption. When the highest level of the country is tarnished and tainted with corruption, you cannot expect the ministers, the cabinet, the secretaries, the board of directors of state institutions to say no to corruption. There will be zero tolerance for corruption in the policies that we implement. Government will play the role as the facilitator, provide the necessary resources for the businesses to grow to the full potential that you deserve to be. This is the opportunity that we will create. It will be through a wave of digitization. We will bring resources together. We will connect entities, connect businesses, connect individuals to take Sri Lanka forward.
Dr. Sudipin, we have...
I'll take a few more seconds.
Yes,
I'll
please, yeah.
stop now. And it will be by creation through the production economy, which I will explain. We will connect Sri Lanka to global value chains, allow you to thrive as businesses to the best potential of yours, but at the same time deliver social equity and inclusion also. Let's discuss more detail when we get a time. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much. A lot of answering that you all have to do. So, my first question is to Honorable Shehan Semasinghe. If you don't mind, I think we'd like you all to be at the podiums we have made for all of you. Sorry, yeah, we are seated, yes. You're serving the people after all. Yeah. Honorable Shehan Semasinghe, we saw your presentation where you have mentioned a lot about what has happened in the last 2 years in terms of stability. But what is your program that you all have in mind to bring growth? Because stabilization and reform come with the strategy every day. There has to be a growth path that also you have to show as to how you are going to bring 3, 4, 5%, 6% growth, at least in 3, 4 years' time, or work towards that. So what exact plans does Honorable Ranil Wickremesinghe has in the event he's elected to bring that growth strategy? You have 3 minutes to answer.
Yep. Davinder, it's a good question. I think we have already reached, and hopefully we will reach somewhere around 4% growth this year. So the key was reforms. You can't forget the reform path. And more, like Sri Lanka has faced crisis situations in the past. Then we go to the IMF. This is the 17th time we went to the IMF. The moment we stabilize, there is a tendency to reverse. So this vicious cycle plays in Sri Lanka, and as a result, I don't think any of us would wish for an 18th IMF program, which will be very tough than the 17th program what we go through. We have a plan on this. The main reason why we introduced the economic transformation law was aimed at this plan. Because every political leader tends to bring out policies which he thinks would make him popular. So now we have a law in place. The law has targets. It is answerable to Parliament, and it is the duty of any government to ensure that you deliver what is being specified in the law, and if there is a deviation, then still there is a way out to that also to ensure that the country won't return back to a crisis. We do understand growth is very important, but at the same time, stability is also very important. We need stability basically to be enabled. Without growth, we can't have stability. So stability should run in parallel with growth, and we have always shown our results. I think the results itself will speak, and we will expect to have a growth strategy of 7% in the economy to ensure that we have lost. Like basically, our GDP has come down, and our intention is to ensure that we have a further growth on the economy and ensure that we are fully stabilized. I think this will take a further 12 to 15 months, and thereafter we can have a safe and a promising country what we wish for.
Thank you. Can you say something what will you do different to what you are doing now in the event your candidacy elected?
Okay. One, if I
On the growth side of it.
Yeah. If you look at on the growth side, okay, give me a second, please. The more importantly, we will, where did Sri Lanka focus mostly? We focus mostly on fiscal or monetary stimulus than going in for productivity increase. So this is one of the key concerns we all had, and that had not worked well for Sri Lanka. Then secondly, we have already introduced new economic zones, and also the new FTAs we are looking at. We have already finalized the FTA with Thailand to ensure liberal trade. We are also discussing and near finalizing the FTA with India, with the ECTA agreement. That will also will help us to grow the economy. And also, if you look at the ETA, the Economic Transformation Bill, this also have the Productivity Commission. The Productivity Commission will basically support productivity enhancement of firms seeking to penetrate to export markets and those facing import competition. We will also have a trade national single window process, which we are working on, which is need of the hour, and also a national tariff policy that strikes a fair balance between interests of exporters, importers, and consumers. Agriculture modernization would be one of the key sectors Sri Lanka our government will focus on. And then if you look at the Urume program of land ownership, so that will also be very important to stimulus growth.
Okay, thank you. So we'll stop at that. Thank you very much.
Dr. Harsha De Silva, this question is to you. So we've heard your presidential candidate say in numerous places, and we've read as well, that under him, the government would look at renegotiating the IMF terms and conditions. Today, you actually said that you all are looking at giving additional public sector salary adjustments. I think yesterday or day before, there was a conversation about you all giving 20,000 rupees, or is it a gratis? And I'm not sure whether it is a gratis or a program to the poor. Now, in this context, can you tell us the parameters you're looking at to renegotiate in relation to the three factors of revenue of GDP, gross financing needs, and primary account surplus? And this, at the same time, to ensure that debt sustainability is achieved.
Well, I mean, I'll be quite honest with you. We all know it was us who advocated in 2020, August, the first day I came to Parliament, 9th Parliament, that you guys better go to the IMF and resolve this before we became bankrupt. All you guys laughed at me, said, what nonsense, we have a homegrown solution. There is no homegrown solution or there was no at the time, right? And we all learned lessons. We don't have to be standing here saying, look, we are unable to change any condition in the IMF agreement. We don't buy that. We didn't oppose the government going to the IMF. We didn't vote against it because we knew as a responsible opposition that was necessary at the time. Now, from that day on, we said there are certain things we need to amend. If you recall the graph I put up on the screen that showed how the emerging markets were contributing to global production. It was going up and up and up. And Sri Lanka's case, you saw it going up and then crashing. We are one of the most closed economies in the world. You look at how you measure trade openness, add exports and imports, divide that by GDP, compare against other countries, you'll realize yourself. So we need to ensure that we realign our economy from what some people call import substitution, statist. Remove the anti-tradable bias in our system. Unless you do that, we are never going to get the kind of growth that people are talking about. So for us, the problem in the IMF agreement is for them, debt is debt, growth is growth. And we say no. Debt is our external debt, domestic debt. And we need tradable growth and non-tradable growth. During Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa's time, we had 9% growth in 2012. And it crashed to 3%, 3.5% in 2013 because it was construction-led, non-tradable growth. That is not sustainable. So what we told the IMF is what we need to ensure that we are safe, our debt is sustainable on the external front, is to ensure that we have growth on the tradable front. Now, we need to link those two things. To us, this agreement is more like an extended SBA than an extended fund facility. So therefore, some tilting of the economy, making sure the incentive structures are right so that it is more profitable for investors like yourselves to put money in internationally competitive production rather than sort of be protected behind protection, large protective walls, and to be inefficient and yet make money hand over fist and sometimes even think of running for president. So in that context, the other issue we've told the IMF is about equity in taxes. A lot of middle-class people working up to, say, getting 500,000 rupees a month is getting hammered at 36% highest marginal tax rate at 308,000 rupees a month. Can you live with that? But at the same time, we have undertaken to deliver 15.4%. So like I said, on the taxes, we are not changing the DSA parameters. We have been very clear. The 15.4% on taxes, the 2.3%, Peter and I had a great debate. I said, look, Peter, 2.3, 2.1, let's discuss this, right? But essentially, we are not messing around with the DSA. We are not going to do an alternative DSA. The DSA, what you did, Mahinda, what you did, Nandalal, is not what is being applied. It is what they did, the staff did. Anybody can download the DSA and do it. But that doesn't mean you can get the IMF to agree to that, because all of those are based on assumptions. You can say that, Professor, you can have 7% growth, but where are you going to get the 7% growth? That's why I said, even post-IMF, to get to $23,000, you need 10% growth year on year on year on year. Can you do that? Let's be realistic, right? So on that basis, what I explained is our middle-class tax cut. And we have been extremely responsible. We are not changing the tax-free limits. We are not changing the 36% limit.
Harsha, will the parameters that are currently there, the 2.4% targets that are given by IMF,
Okay.
Are you going to, how going to find out?
So we got the 95%.
Right.
Then we got a 13%. Within the 13%, we got a 4.5%. We got a 2.3%. And then you got to make sure you have enough debt restructuring to fill the gap. That's all, right? But within that, certainly, once we get elected on the 22nd of this month, next month, must have the freedom within the parameters, within the contours, to make certain adjustments. So the adjustments we are not talking about here are nothing for you to worry about. We are not going to collapse the program, because we are the people who told to go to the IMF. And also, on the monetary policy side, we are not going to set interest rates. We won't. How can we? The whole point of printing money is setting interest rates. You set interest rates at 5% and tell the central bank, you print at 5%. Right? So we are not, Duminder, we are responsible. Please understand, we have a good team. We have Iran, we have Kabir, myself also included. We know. We worked in this country. We worked overseas. We have been entrepreneurs. We have created wealth. right? Create a jobs, work, and also understand. Sajid, I'll tell you the issue. Sajid understands. He gets the pulse of the poor. There is massive poverty. 3 million to 7 million. You see, you can't fill a pot if you keep the pot upside down. You got to make the pot stand with the opening on top so the water goes in.
Okay.
As much as you want to do all these reforms, it's like pouring water on a pot that is turned upside
Thanks,
down.
Dr.
Thank
Harsha.
you. Thank you, Harsha. Thanks a lot. I'll come back to you again. I know we have a lot to talk, but we'll have a little bit of time. Professor Bandara, my next question is to you. I thought you had to change your strategy. You see, the SLPP strategy was always big governments, big infrastructure projects, funded by loans. And that is how you ran the economy. There are good and bad of both, right? Now, listening to you, it appears that you're still promoting big government. You're promoting public sector involvement. I just listened to you. Is that going to be a policy again in the current situation, in the current context of things where our finances are? Can you embark on a policy of big government, public sector, infrastructure, the same way that you have done in the past?
I don't think that you have understood what I said. You see, this is an integrated growth model where we have state priority.
What is the state priority you're talking? What is the state priority you're talking?
National interest, economic growth, social progression, environmental sustainability, and which is integrated, connected to each other. You can't look at anything in isolation. Now, say for example, economic growth. Can it happen in isolation? No. You have to have a holistic approach, right?
But Professor Bandara, the thing, I guess what we're trying to get there is, this was tried before, and the outcome is where we struggled last 2 years ago. So how do we ensure that whatever approach, if you have the same approach, what's the different outcome we can
look
expect?
here, this is not just state priority. It's connected with 4 pillars, right? Now, look at the second pillar, innovation. What we do innovate, state sector, agriculture sector, manufacturing sector, service sector. We need to innovate, right? You can have dreams, you can have raised voice with lots of emotions. And if you looked at the investment, entrepreneurship, human resources development, research for commercialization, infrastructure, these are new adding into, I told very specifically the policy framework that we are looking at is very simple, which is proven. Now, if you looked at over the last 40 to 50 years, from 2005 to 2015, what we brought in is remarkable. And we have to acknowledge the fact that the essential infrastructure was developed. By utilizing them is a issue, right? And then the last pillar, freedom. We need economic freedom. That is what Harsha was talking about. We need political freedom. That's what he was talking about. And cultural freedom. That's what people talking about. And the religious freedom. That's what we need in a multicultural, multi-race society. So you won't be able to achieve anything unless you looked at not just economy. You have to see a holistic perspective. Now those countries developed, they have looked at every single element. Some are economic, some are non-economic, right? You just can't say that, are you promoting state? No, we promote state, giving priority to drive the force. That's what Harsha said. That's what...
I don't think that's what he said.
No, he said he wants to strengthen the state as well.
Did you say that, Harsha?
Yes, the state mechanism should be strengthened.
Okay, thank you very much. My next question is to Dr. Suriperuma. I'll have to. I'm sure others will have more questions to answer. Dr. Suriperuma, I'm watching your presentation. Is a lot of criticism of others have done, rather than what you are supposed to do. But I know you released a manifesto yesterday or the day before, which was very descriptive in terms of what you're planning to do. From the private sector's perspective, the alarming area that I want to ask you is, you all have said you're going to adjust the DSA. If the DSA is amended, we do not know whether IMF will stay in the program, from what we understand. If you are going to discuss the parameters again with IMF, you are saying you are going to negotiate or renegotiate. What exactly are you going to renegotiate with the IMF in order to change the parameters? If that happens, the program will collapse, is our view. What answers can you give to that?
Thank you, Duminder. First of all, Duminder, the letter of invite to the General Secretary of the party did not mention of a setup of this nature. It was a discussion, but I suppose that's the new format of discussions going forward.
What I didn't disclose is standing, rest of it was there.
Sure. Okay. So that's why I said new format of discussions. That's fine, we are okay. And just wanted to check the reason that I did not spend too much time on the content, because we have released the document for the information of public and for the consumption of international community. As any of the other parties released their policies, we are just 20 days before the election, ladies and gentlemen. Do we have the party's manifesto available? No. So once again, we are on a hypothetical journey. We are to believe stories of people. That's the difference.
You
so
can explain,
content,
yes.
I'm coming there.
Okay.
I'm there. So the reason that I took not take much time is on that. And the question relating to IMF program and on the DSA. A DSA is necessary for a country to negotiate based on their basis. What is the projection? What are the outflows? What are the inflows? What's the external sector going to be, etc.? How are you going to refinance? At what point you will reach your debt sustainability? In order to do that, one way is to, obviously IMF has given their DSA model. What we are saying is we will do our own DSA, which we have prepared, which we are on the process of finalizing with the input of industry and the experts, which we are doing at the moment. So we will have a basis for discussion with IMF. Principle number one is we have clearly mentioned we will not derail from the IMF program. Country is not in a position to do that. It will be within the IMF program.
Very clear our remaining with the IMF program.
Yes. But we have already mentioned to IMF as well, based on the DSA that we prepare, we will present our case to you. Millions of children are starving. We need to provide relief to them. So they have indicated, give us our ways of reaching out to the revenue targets, give us our ways of managing our expenses, then yes, we should be able to engage in the conversation. To form that basis, we need our DSA. So DSA contains a lot of those information. That's going to be our basis for the discussion with IMF. That is what is
So you mean they refuse to accept your suggestions? What are you going to do?
So IMF, based on the discussions that we have had so far, several discussions that we have had with IMF, they said it is on the credibility of the program that we will bring in. And they wanted details of where we are going to generate revenue. We indicated to them the way the revenue is leaking at the moment, the way how Treasury is prevented from receiving the revenue that the government deserves. For example, the sugar scandal, the way how politicians interfered in the middle of the night, issued gazettes, and did favors to their political, the people who supported for them to come into power, stole billions of rupees. So there were money that never cited the Treasury. So we highlighted the revenue leakages in the current model. We suggested how we are going to fix certain institutions which are supposed to generate revenue. Customs, for example, IRD, for example. You can't fix a government institution just by changing the president of the country. You can't change the government institution just by putting an army general as the head of the institution. We tried. It failed. You need a change in culture.
Okay, thank you, Ashana. I think Shehan, next question.
Yeah, so we go into the next round, and based on time, then we can go on to each of you all asking each other one question. But mine is to Minister Shehan. So in one of the election promises in the en route to the election was that your candidate is going to adjust public sector salaries. Yes, it is to address the abnormal discrepancies you've seen, and you want to adjust it in 2025. When you look at the numbers, a 10,000 adjustment would cost the country 156 billion per annum. And to put context to this, last year's revenue collection on taxes was 144 billion only. And then yesterday you all did announce that you all were wanting to reduce pay tax as well. Now, in this context, how are you going to manage the primary targets and fiscal targets here?
All announcements are based on the 2.3% primary balance target. We can't deviate from that. And secondly, I think the tax revision what the President announced was something which we have been discussing since September 2023.
So where are you going to find the fiscal space for it,
Minister? Let me continue this first, and then I'll answer your question. So we initiated discussions in 2023 September, because we also understand when the economy is growing and we need to give a substantial share of that growth back to the public. Now what we have proposed on the PIT is the tax-free threshold will remain at 1.2%, 1.2 million per annum. The tax bands will increase from 500,000 to 720,000. The marginal tax rate at each band remains at 6%, and the top level will remain at 36%. So the expectation of this relief is targeted at the mid-level. So basically, if you look at a person having a monthly income of 200,000, will have a relief of 20%. Anybody has a 300,000 income will have a 25% reduction, and anybody of 400,000, for example, will have a 23% reduction. This will cost around 0.07% of the GDP, and that we will have compensating measures, but will ensure that there is no further burden on the general masses. Then coming back to the public sector salaries, this has been discussed with the IMF also for over a year, because we do understand our public sector salaries are pretty much lower than the private sector salaries. And as a result, we are in the view that the public sector salaries should be increased. We have a growth of 4%, as I said, as against a prediction of 2%. And the economy is getting healthier, and more momentum and confidence is being growing. So we believe this is something that which is expected, and we need approximately around additional 250 billion rupees to have the increase, and will ensure that proposed salary increase will be implemented from 2025 January, and which will be embedded to the budget which has been prepared now.
Thank you, Honorable Singh. Harsha, my next question is to you. We have heard and seen your candidate saying that they are going to write off agricultural debt of the farmers. They are going to give a 20,000 rupee allowance or subsidy to poor families. So, we're writing off the debt of the farmers. Who's going to take that loss? How are you going to finance it? Is it the banks who are going to take the loss? Is it the government that is going to finance it? And what is the fiscal space you have in the current context in order to finance such a gap?
I mean, let's understand here really what's happening on the ground, Duminder, right? A lot of these poor folk, once they basically finish the sowing, they go and mortgage their tractor and the rotary, because there is no way to continue with the rest of the cycle of their crop. That is the reality, right? And also a lot of these MSME people, the government, after much force brought onto it by Sajid Premadasa on the Parate matter, gave an extension till the 15th of December. Now what happens after the 15th of December? Let us be also conscious, Duminda, unlike most of you guys here, there are a lot of people who are unable to make ends meet. I mean, what is the point of a government if we can't look after the people? Right? That's what I ended by saying. We want to win for all, but that cannot come at the expense of our people not being able to make ends meet. They cannot buy a packet of milk powder. I have seen in my electorate in Kotte, mothers going to the small kade and purchasing, believe me, a tablespoon of milk powder. 1 tablespoon of milk powder. Can you even imagine that? You CEOs? You can't. But that's the reality. So therefore, we have to make sure within our ability to make these people also feel first-class citizens of this country, not just third-class citizens that get crumbs thrown to them.
All that is true, we understand.
Listen, every proposal that Mr. Sajid Premadasa has put forward has backing of revenue. I am telling you, there is not 1 cent that we will spend unless we can show you that revenue is coming. And it is not mine to believe. We will show you. Research companies in Sri Lanka have undertaken a lot of this type of revenue shortfalls, where you can get revenue, how much it costs to spend on various programs.
But Dr. Harsha, previously successive governments have identified that they are going to bring revenue on paper. But how are you going to practically make it happen? Because there is a whole change you need to do that. How are you going to do it?
It's digitalization. It's digitalization. The fundamental of this change is through digitalization. If India can do it, if Aadhaar does it, if you have the Pangwala selling bulat on a QR code, that revenue comes to Mahinda. Currently it doesn't. Right? Even look at, some people are talking about withholding tax on interest. Okay? Think about it. How many people are evading? How many people are underreporting? So, is an opportunity to take at source something on the withholding tax on interest and fees without jeopardizing the actual burden on the people, but increasing compliance. There are ways to do this, Duminda.
Thank you, Harsha.
Professor Bandara, this is for you. This is actually, I think it's in everybody's mind and it's important to be addressed here, is this tackling corruption, right? Everybody has said something in vague form of they're going to tackle corruption with a bill, with a law. We've had this, there are enacted bills. My question to you is, what are you really going to do to crack corruption? How are you going to improve economic governance and transparency? And again, what you're doing differently?
Now you see, it reminds me 2016, or rather 2015, this 100-day program. You remember all? During the Yahapalani? So nothing is possible unless you get the people's support over it. Corruption, to a large extent, can manage by the law. But the law is not just enough. You need a wider, broad-based strategy to avoid possible corruption. Now, the corruption in our society deals with quite a few commissions, departments, and various other institutions. And so much of corruption is on the air. Now, my friend who was talking about, instead of policy, he was talking about a political corruption. Therefore, this should come as a part of the citizenship from the school days. The time that we start schooling, we never heard of these things. Maybe it has indirectly a part of our curriculum, citizens' education. Therefore, one way to look at a corruption-free society, we have to educate our people. Now, all of a sudden, overnight, some people become rich. So, we all have to be watchguards, whistleblowers. So, that is the citizenship. Instead of having another commission headed by the retired judge, now you remember during the Yapalanaya, how many institutions set up, but none got caught, none being punished. There was a famous institution called FCID. Those are political scandals. I would say that in our policy priority, we take this in a very careful manner, knowing that it is a part of the state priority.
Thanks, Dr.
And the freedom that we are looking at.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Dr. Harshana, so my question is to you. You did say, I'm from the private sector, and in your opening remarks, you did mention that private sector also will not keep managers who do not perform or execute and deliver KPIs. Also in private sector, particularly, if I speak for myself, I would also question and hesitate recruiting somebody who has no experience or has not executed. So my question to you, and it's a perceived question from the private sector perceived view, that they wonder whether the MPP has the capacity to run government and bureaucracy, given the fact that the NPP has not been in power before. What can you say to dispel these concerns?
Thank you very much. I suppose it's a very fair question, because in one side, we have a proven lot, proven for corruption, proven for robbery, proven for incompetency, proven for unable to deliver, proven for overspending, proven for no regard for human life and life of citizens in this country. On the other side, Madam Kasturi, very true, NPP is there, unblemished record in terms of corruption, but we have a team that you would have repeatedly seen in social media and in media. We have, I myself, being in the government service for nearly 10 years, private sector plus government 33 years plus experience. I've been in Africa for 6 years. I've been in Australia for 5 years, but I'm a small fellow at NPP. We have professors, scientists, researchers, engineers, accountants, lawyers, you name it. The team you all have seen in enormous times in social media, wherever we appear. And at the same time, the question that gentleman, the business leader, clapped for is for the question, not for the answer. Because those are the questions the country is asking for.
But Dr. Harshana, again, that's the concern, is that it's like taking somebody who does research and tell him to manage government bureaucracy and run a country. How, without experience, how are you going to navigate? Because whatever said or done, you're inheriting an existing system, right?
Correct. So that's why I said It requires political will to bring about that change in the country. Who would have that political will? I was not sure. We are in a comedy show when the port tour representative was saying people are getting rich overnight. Is this a comedy show? I was not sure. So that's where the political will has to come. The leader has to demonstrate by conduct, not just by empty words, that people can believe. So the team that we have is experienced in the government service, in engaging in institutions, in working with public, in working with international institutions, working in overseas countries, developing countries, emerging markets, who have expertise in respective areas. So when you take a candidate to your institution, you look at their track record in terms of what they have done, how they have performed. Have they given false promises to their previous employers and they were not able to deliver? You can look at the same thing. There was a time, the limited period of time, where some of our representatives were in the parliament and they were in charge of ministries. Within 14 months period, they turn around loss-making institutions to profit-making institutions. 14 months period.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Harshana.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we have more questions lined up, but I think in the interest of time, we can't ask all those questions. I know some people have to leave. Shahana has to go for the President's Manifesto, Harsha has to go to Kandy. So what we'll do is, the last session is a bit of a dogfight, right? I would put it that way. You can raise a question to one or two candidates, and such candidates can answer those questions in 3 minutes. So, Shehan, my first gives opportunity to you to raise a question based on the presentation made by any of the 3 candidates, the one that you want to select and the question that you want to ask for a clarification from that candidate.
Okay, let me ask Dr. Harshana one question. Now, in your policy document, it's clearly said that the DSA is going to be renegotiated. So in our experience, and we have implemented a successful IMF program, and now it's a time the program is bearing fruit. I wonder how we are going to have this DSA changed. Because all parameters in this IMF program, the 17th program, is along with this DSA, whether it's debt restructuring or revenue or expenditure, all concerns are revolving around the DSA. So you are the only party I have heard that the DSA is going to be renegotiated. And what confidence do you have the proposed DSA by the NPP will be accepted by the IMF? If not, what is going to happen? So in my opinion, with all the hard work what we have done during the last 2 years, I feel you will have to call for an end of the IMF program and renegotiate a complete program which will take a little over 2 years at least. So can the country survive? And the other point what I want to ask is, you were talking about expected revenues. Now if you see what has happened to Maldives, Maldives have crashed mainly because they were managing the economy with expected revenues. They have not managed the external resources. So I would like to ask how you're going to implement your program and how this program is going to be credible and deliver results. Thank you.
Over to you. Yes.
Go ahead. Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Minister, for the question. I think that the same question Dumin asked a little while ago, which I answered, but for somebody who didn't pay attention, I'll explain once again. So,
Of paying attention, I was not clear on that answer.
I'm sorry. Sure. I'll provide more clarity on that one in a much simpler language. So, when IMF presented the DSA to the Sri Lankan government, they had a basis of 16 failed implementations in Sri Lanka because they worked with corrupt politicians, public officials who were lip servants appointed by those corrupt politicians into state institutions. So they knew what they were up to. So their DSA is on the premises with rampant corruption in the country. Uncontrollable.
So Harshana, that's not the question asked. I think the question is, how are you going to change and what happens in the interim if they refuse? That's the question, if you can answer that.
Yes, so that's where I'm coming
You
from.
can just answer that. Yeah.
Yes. So that is the basis IMF has given the DSA. Our basis is you address some of these key concerns in the country, which we have already discussed with IMF, and in a new culture, in a new environment, this is how we are going to operate, this is how we are going to generate revenue, this is how we are going to manage expenses, this is where we are going to generate savings, and therefore accordingly, this leads to this is our basis for our DSA. And IMF said, okay, when we are elected, we'll discuss more to go on those lines and see what are the possibilities and options. Because we clearly indicated it's not a derailment of the program. So within the broad parameters, it is about providing relief to people.
Harsha, over to you.
You can choose one candidate to ask a question from. One or two, sorry.
Yeah, we have 4 opponents now. So
Right. I'll ask Dr. Harshana just one quick question and then I'll ask Shehan something else. What is your policy on the central bank independence given that you voted against?
Thank you. Our policy is independence not only to central bank. All state institutions must be relieved from the clutches of politicians. Institutions should not be politicized, but independence should not be limited to name board independence. It is about bringing in people with competency, integrity, ability to withstand political pressure to deliver the mandate of people. So our policy on independence, whether it is to the central bank or to the treasury or to any other state institution, it's about giving the true independence. That's where I said at the beginning in my previous explanation, previous central bank act, what was the provision that prevented the monetary board refusing to print money when the political pressure was applied, if it is the case? Was it because Secretary to the Treasury was a member of the monetary board? Weren't there many other members to override the request from one member in the monetary board? Didn't the chairman of the monetary board had a role to play to make that question? So these are my responses.
Sir, my question is, you voted against it, no? So are you going to repeal it? That's the question.
I'll answer again. We will strengthen it further.
Dr. Harshana, just to add on to that, I'm just curious because you all published your manifesto, and in that there was one line about influencing interest rates. Now, if central bank is independent, what does that have to do with your manifesto and interest rates influencing?
So policy of the political party will be delivered through the state institutions. So it's about bringing getting the mandate from people to deliver the policy that we have prepared, and that policy will be implemented through the state institutions. So when you say influencing, it is these policies to be discussed with the state institutions and get them to implement. We'll obviously listen to their feedback. We'll obviously work with experts in the respective areas, and we'll get them delivered.
Sir, I still didn't get the answer. Will you repeal the Central Bank Act or not? That's a simple yes or no answer.
Dr. Harsha, for you, it may be a simple answer of yes or no. But for 22 million people in this country, it is the calamity politicians have created in the last so many years. So our answer, we will support the independence of central bank. We will support the independence of all other institutions as well. Thank you.
And give independence to the Treasury. That is fiscal policy of the government. You can only give independence to the central bank. You can never make the treasury independent. If you make the treasury independent, how are you going to run your program?
Independence. Independence is about taking the politicization out from these institutions. Allow professionals, senior state officials who have the competency and expertise to run these institutions. As I said, people have given the mandate to the government, and the government will discuss this mandate, these details with the state institutions, and it will be implemented through them, but not
Thank you. Thank you,
politicized.
Professor Mehta Bandara for you. Sorry, Mr. Professor Bandara. I'm sorry. I mistook with Rajiv Mehta. I'm sorry about Professor Bandara, yeah.
Now, it's unfair, but still I have to ask you. No. You see, the last couple of months, this was a story in all media forms, particularly in social media. That your leader, the Honorable Anurukumar Dissanayake, take it so easy to pay. The governor is 100 billion, right, to be paid?
Yeah, one of good to answer the questions. Yeah.
Debt? 100 billion. How are we going to deal with? As I said, it is easy.
Thank you. So obviously, the debt, the mountain of debt that you all have created, someone has to take the responsibility of discharging that one. So that is why, if you go through, take some time and read this document, you will find some of the answers, but I'll elaborate. So it's about preventing leakages from the government institutions, generate revenue by, according to the statistics from the banking sector, about 2/3 of the economy functions not in the formal economy. It's about bringing them into the formal economy on a gradual basis over a period of time. Allow them to take part in the tax-paying activities instead of approximately about the 40% who pays tax bears the full brunt of the calamity that we are going through. So gradually bringing in the informal economy into the formal economy, preventing the leakages from the state institutions by eliminating the wasteful expenses of the government. That is where our production economy, we have an ambitious target of 45 billion exports by 2030. So combination of those activities will generate the required revenue and the cash flows. Obviously, we have a lot of plans and products that are mentioned to invite Sri Lankans, overseas, foreign investors to bring in FDI, to welcome FDI without asking commission. So we have a lot of plans on.
So Harshan is running short of time.
Thank you.
But I don't think that he have answered.
Harshan, you have the
chance?
opportunity to ask the last question from any other three candidates who are here.
Thank you. I'll ask two questions. One goes to the opposition member of parliament. You were saying that opposition in 2020 was saying, go to IMF, go to IMF, go to IMF. But when you were in government, didn't you have the analysis to show that we are sitting on an unsustainable mountain of debt few months before, maybe a year before? When you borrowed, two questions, when the government borrowed heavily, the unprecedented amount of borrowings that you all did showed the debt is unsustainable, the money that you are taking is merely adequate to repay interest. So wasn't there any contingency plan to reach out to IMF at that time? Why somebody would wait until just the day government changes and shouting at the highest voice in the parliament, I told you to go to IMF? That's my first question.
Sir, by the way, I have a name. My name is Harsha. First thing is, departed Mangala Samaravira did a lot to fix the problem. There was a medium-term debt management strategy that was passed in 2018. Unfortunately, on the coup on 28th of October, that got thrown away. If we actually followed the MDTS, we would not have fallen to this mess. Even on the second week of November, IMF did a study and said the debt was still sustainable. Unfortunately, Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa's advisors got him to change the taxes, and then we saw what happened. But prior to that, Mr. Indrajit Kumaraswamy, Dr. Kumaraswamy, was a very respectable, he is a respectable, responsible man. When he came to office, or when he took over, when 2015 happened, there was a total of, if I remember right, $8.2 billion in foreign reserves. Of that $8.2 billion, $3.5 billion consisted of hot money. Consisted of, yes, hot money that was foreigners brought in dollars, converted to rupees, invested in treasury bills, they could take it back anytime. Another 2.5 odd billion were short-term swaps. So these were short-term money that needed to have been made longer term. So one of the reasons why those international sovereign bonds were brought in at that time was to sustain the reserves that we had. Because by the time the 2019 government came to office, I believe there was about $7.6 billion in reserves. And in that $7.6 billion, short-term swaps and hot money accounted for less than $600 million. And also note that Verite Research had done some work that the money that was borrowed between 2015 and 2019, 89.8% of that money was to pay interest on borrowings prior to 2015. And also note, in the year 2019, there was about $5 billion that needed to have been repaid. And in that $5 billion was 1.5 or 7 billion in ISB payments also. And also note, I asked Dr. Kumaraswamy, Indrajit, why are you trying to borrow another $2.8 billion? He told me, Harsha, this is an election year. You don't know what will happen. Remember last time what happened in 2018? Right? We were in an IMF program. So, Harshana, we were in an IMF program, right? The Gotabaya Rajapaksa government threw it away, not us. And then he said October 2018 was a problem because money flew out, we got downgraded, and we couldn't pay the 500 million in January of 2019. I myself, with Mangal and Indrajit, met the head of the IMF. In her room, we explained what had happened, and we adjusted the program slightly so that we could deal with this issue. So we knew the problem was there. It was not a problem created overnight. The issue is, and continues to be, that we are not focusing on tradable growth. And unless we are able to get our growth coming from the tradable sector, mainly exports, and internationally competitive import substitution, we are never going to be able to fix this problem. So therefore, we know what the problem is. I mean, I'm not going to throw mud at anyone. I didn't thus far, and I don't intend to do it now. But, you know, people did attempt to do the right thing, and it's unfortunate that our people didn't understand the gravity of the problem and went for false promises and elected that government. I hope it doesn't happen again.
Thank you very much.
Two questions. You said I had the
Okay,
first two questions. The second question once again to the
last question.
Last question. Yes, please. Can we know the handout package that opposition leader is mentioning several relief programs suggesting reducing the fertilizer prices once again to it's about 3,000 rupees plus or minus if you look at the current market prices. If you look at the 1.3 million hectares only on paddy, ignoring the fruits and veggies, etc. And 20,000 rupees per family. The bailout package that looking for, we have about 2.5 million families who would have been expecting that, and a minimum 57,500 government salary indicated, and reducing the pay from up to 1% to from 1% to 24%. The number, what is the expected loss of or the amount that required to finance this? The number. Thank you.
Right. There is no, you can't buy fertilizer for $3,000 a bag. Why don't you go?
The reduction from the current market price of 8,000 rupees
yes, so
plus
no
or
problem.
minus.
So what
promise for 5,000, reduction is 3.
What we have is about 12 bags per year for 2 hectares. $120,000 is what they get. right? That's the current subsidy, right? Which means the current cost. The current subsidy, therefore, is 60,000 rupees, right? You need 12 bags for two seasons for 2 hectares. You work out the number, it's marginal difference when you give it at 5,000 rupees, because currently the selling price is between 8,000 and 10,000. On the Aswasuma, we have said that we are going to increase from 5,000 to 10,000 for 960,000 people, and then from 8,500 to 10,000 for 960,000 people, and the 15,000 that you give currently for 408,000 people will remain, right? There is going to be a cost, and I'll tell you what it is, and also the differently able people, CKDU and others, there is a certain amount. The total program of our expenditure, including cost of living allowance, the salaries, the fertilizer, maternity leave benefits, menstrual equity, fuel subsidies, Aswasuma, all of that will be pretty much under 200 billion rupees, right? And the 200 billion rupees in revenue, we are going to show you that we can get it from the changes that we talk about in withholding tax, excise tax, casino tax, property tax, sugar sweeteners, BPS, export duties, so on and so forth. We have the numbers. Like I am telling you one more time, right? We are responsible. We are not going to cap the highest marginal tax rate at 24%. I don't know where you got it from, because I explained earlier that it is going to go up to 36%, right? So all what we are doing is to readjust, realign, so that your middle-level executive gets a decent amount to take home, so he and she can actually spend on something. Currently, they can't. And the last point is, we have been also most responsible because we don't want to take 100,000 people off the tax files. If you increase the threshold from 100,000 to 200,000 people, Mahinda, correct me if I'm wrong, you're going to take out at least 100,000 people. I mean, we want direct taxes. And why am I saying 1%? Tell me, is 1% something that people can't pay? Aren't people willing to pay for their education? Aren't they willing to pay for their security? Aren't they willing to pay for their health care? Aren't they willing to pay for the sewage area? 1%? 1%? Don't tell me people in this country are so selfish, they don't want to contribute. They do. They can pay 1%, 3%. They can pay 6%, 12%. I can also show you the numbers, right? So we are working within a framework that is not going to disturb the revenue. That is why we said we are going to keep to the DSA. We are not going to try and force our alternative DSA on the IMF. They will not take it. You can try. But you didn't tell us what would happen if they refuse. That was really the question.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
To disturb you there, Daminda, my part of the question is,
no, Harshan, I think
24% reduction, it
has
was not
to leave
mentioned.
for the manifesto launch of his party, so I'm sorry I can't take any more
Because
questions.
it was on the paper that the party leader has said it's 24%. He said whether we got.
I know. So
party
those,
leader is saying one thing.
Just one minute.
Honorable
Because you are talking about your
into
manifesto. Our manifesto blueprint has been in Parliament. We subjected it to debate. It is in the Hansard.
Dr. Godoyeva said that was not signed by party leader, so I don't know which one is the correct version.
Anyway, so we'll bring it to a close.
I am not like you. I won't be kuhaka, right?
What was said on open media.
Okay.
Please, this is not personal. Let's talk policy. I didn't throw mud at you, sir, right? And
It's not
therefore,
about mud, it is about facts.
Okay, so
I lead the SJB's economic team, right? Not anybody else. So listen to me when I say what I say. That is the SJB policy.
thank you, Harsha.
Right? And therefore, ours has been in the public domain since February of 2023. Not today. February of 2023. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. A warm round of applause. On behalf of the Ceylon Chamber and all our members, I sincerely thank the 4 speakers who came here and gave a very insightful presentation of their party policies and took part in active debate.
I need half a second. You asked about the German ambassador. He has just sent you on the VW. I hope you share it with everyone.
Okay.
Honorable His Excellency Jürgen Mohard, exactly what happened about the emission scan and all of that.
Right, thank
So
you.
you can send it to the...
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your participation. We hope to continue the discussion. Not now, once the government is elected, after 1 year's time, we'll do evaluation and see whether they stick to their promises. With that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your participation.